Welcome to Good Times RVing. Today, let's discuss mountain passes. This is a recent trip from Lexington, Kentucky to Lexington, Virginia over I-64. It was actually an interesting trip. It took me a couple days. We had 7% grades, over 5 miles on a twisty road. That's a trifecta of risks, if you will. If planned properly, can be quite easy. Planning, again, is key. Here's a directory I use. It's an online directory that's updated quite often. Mountain Directory has maps. Here's the West Virginia map. It has all the little triangles, or notes. Note 28, that's what we're interested in. And here we are, 5 miles, 7% descent, eastbound traffic, that's us, on I-64, begins near milepost 133. But here we are getting on to I-64 in Lexington, Kentucky. I-64 on the Kentucky side really is just a regular stretch of interstate. It does get a little hilly and twisty towards the West Virginia border, but nothing of note. When you get into West Virginia, you know you're in hill country, and the road gets very twisty and very hilly. And I agree with Governor Jim Justice. The roads are wild and the views are wonderful. On the West Virginia DOT website, they have this nice list of Interstate 64 interchanges. Gives you all the exits, mile markers, welcome center, rest area, the interchange with I-77, and of course it gives you the end in West Virginia, and so it lets you know how far Virginia is away, mile marker 184. Late in the day, the skies did clear some. Here we are, mile marker 20. We decided to stop for the day here in West Virginia. After some research, we found a campground, KOA campground, Foxfire. Of course, I read the notes, and the notes didn't make any sense to me, other than the sign was near the entrance was very small, and there was a larger sign farther down the road, "Don't miss your turn," basically. The road, it was about 5 or 6 miles off the highway on a major thoroughfare, US 60. And it just, I got a little, I was concerned. Now, let's leave it that way. I was concerned. Reading the notes, they didn't make much sense to me, other than some resort has gone out of business and they're not for sale and don't pay attention to the signage, all of which made me feel this was kind of sketchy. But it was a KOA, they were very decent on the phone, so I thought, okay, we'll give it a try and just be cautious. Take note of the Fox news van there cutting us off. Just going to speed things up here a bit to give you a feel for the road between the entrance exit of I-64 and the campground. It actually was a nice ride, very pretty, hilly. It's about a 5-mile ride down US 60, and with all the notes that I put some notes up before. I'm curious. I feel a little sketchy. I'm not quite sure about this place, so I'm going to approach it with caution. The signage really causes me concern because if I pass this place, there's no way. So I've stopped here in a turn lane. The road apparently is up ahead, about 1,000 feet, and I'm just assessing: do I really want to make that turn, or do I want to continue on and get back on the highway and find some other place? This spot is about halfway for the trip. We're here, it's 5:15 or so now. So I'm thinking we really need to make a decision here. And I'm thinking that since I spoke with the person at the desk, they sounded good. It's a KOA. It's under new management. So I think I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm just making sure I make this turn off correctly. And I see the old resort sign there on the left. It looks like it's been abandoned for a while. And the KOA sign, there's a little one there I never saw. And then there's one well ahead. And that's the big one that you say if you pass that, you've missed the turn. There's a small one. So here's a turn. And of course, that's the sign they're talking about, the out of business resort. But as we turn down this road, it's steep and I'm getting a little cautious. I'm thinking, geez, did I make a mistake? So we moved along, and I continue to get a little concerned being so committed to a small road like this. So the KOA sign appears to be in good condition. It's looking up. I see some trailers off into the distance, some RVs. So maybe this is not a bad choice after all. The sign looks freshly painted. There's a nice pond there, though they've had some rain, so it's a little muddy looking. There's a lot of dirt in the water. Of course, we're not going to go swimming. We're just here overnight. It's a quiet area. I can hear the birds. So that's nice. And it does, at the far end of this, it does back up to the highway, but there's enough trees to buffer that noise. And as we pull in, my spirits improve. It looks like it's going to be an okay place. As it turned out, it was a great stop. It was quiet. Actually, it was a busy park. It was almost completely full, but we got a nice pull-through, nice patio, had nice neighbors, and here we are at 10:50 the next morning. We slept well. We're ready for our adventure to hit the steeps in West Virginia. retraced our steps back into town. We should come up here. We're going to make a right, and then another right. We'll be back on I-64, ready for the steeps. The road is going to be hilly and curvy. There's not much of a straight section of this road, but I typically drive between 45 and 55 depending on terrain. When it gets steep, I back off to 45 and then brake when I'm descending. I'll brake to 40 hard, or as I say, with authority, and then let the RPMs build back up to about 45 miles an hour, and then get back on the brake again with authority down to 40. Typically that's between 3,500 and 4,200 RPM, the typical range. And of course I downshift for the hills. Some interesting interstate facts. Interstate highway system stretches 47,622 miles, includes 10 transcontinental routes varying from 18 miles to 3,000 miles. The longest is I-90 at 3,085 miles, 0.3, between Seattle and Boston. The shortest, I-97, is 17.6 miles between Annapolis and Baltimore, Maryland. The state with the most interstate mileage, of course, is Texas, 3,232 miles. The state with the most interstate routes is New York, with 29 routes. Interstate across the most states, of course, in the east, Interstate I-95, covers 16 states, Florida to Maine. The heaviest traveled interstate, I-405, with 374,000 vehicle miles per day. Annual spending on the interstate highway system is estimated to be $20 billion. The highest, at 11,158 feet, is I-70, the Eisenhower Tunnel in the Rockies. The lowest, minus 103 feet, I-95 Fort McHenry Tunnel under the Baltimore Inner Harbor. I will post the sources of my information in the notes to the video. You'll see coming up here on the right is the capital of West Virginia, and we're running through Charleston. It is an industrial city. It really has that feel to it. But Huntington apparently is a port city. It's on the Ohio River, and that's the really heavy-duty industrial city of West Virginia. But you'll see we're coming into the hill country, and it will be, I'll say, mountainous. Those out west might take exception to that. But here's an interesting thing that I didn't expect. Easy Pass. We have a toll on this road, and I will get to use my new Easy Pass that I acquired from the state of North Carolina. So we're going to try that out. Hopefully it works. I was a bit nervous. Easy Pass. Accepted. This is the big test. While I was aware that there was a toll on this road, I was not aware that it would accept an Easy Pass. So we are going to try out my new North Carolina Easy Pass transponder on this toll. Hopefully it all goes well. But this is a bonus. So I get to try this before I get up into the interstate system up in the Northeast and click off many tolls with my Easy Pass. I purchased the North Carolina Easy Pass just because that also is accepted in Florida. I'm hoping to limit the number of transponders I have floating around in my vehicles. I do have SunPass in Florida, which makes the tolls much easier to deal with. These old-style toll booths are a bit of a challenge. They only give me inches on either side. you'll see this one has a choke point towards the end, which is very nerve-wracking. Literally, when I watch this in the rear camera, there are only a few inches on either side of the dolly. Fingers crossed. Hope it goes green. Oh, there we go. We got a green light. I'm excited. Oh, now I got to deal with this choke point. Yikes. Get skinny. Now we've been grinding up and down the hills and mountains for a while yet, and all of a sudden we get an alarm. Took me a second to figure it out, but it was the emergency broadcast system. Thankfully, I read on the internet that the government was going to be testing our cell phones and a nationwide broadcast to test this new system. Okay, before we know it, we are at mile marker 133, Pluto Road exit, Route 27. And this is the beginning of the very steep section of I-64. Clearly, they don't want you to miss what's going on with the road. There are signs everywhere. And note that over 26,000 pounds, you have to abide by the 45 mile an hour limit. But they do force the trucks off to check their brakes, do a little safety check, make sure before you commit to these hills that your systems are in line and are operating properly. So we've got a sign come up here again. This one's lit with flashing lights. They really don't want you to miss this turn for the trucks. So all commercial trucks need to exit and be subjected to a safety check. And another reminder, if you're over 26,000 pounds, gross vehicle weight rating, 45 miles an hour. And so it begins. 7% grade for 5 miles, and the road turned out to be quite twisty. So we're at an elevation of 2,765 feet. I'm surprised that it's not higher, but the mountains are around us, and we are heading downhill, and it's clearly downhill. It doesn't look so on the video, but when you're there real time, it is quite steep. Here's a first for me, the advertisement of 2 truck ramps, 2 runaway truck ramps, one at 2 miles and one at 3¼ miles. Serious business. As I mentioned earlier, I'm running on a lower gear and running the RPMs reasonably high. I run them up to 4,200, 4,250 RPM, and then hard on the brakes or brake with authority down to 3,800 RPM, and then allow it to build again, allowing the interim the brakes to cool. I had no issue with this, even with a Toad running right at maximum combined weight of 30,000 pounds, and I again had no issue. Even with the twists and turns on this road, if I managed that 45 miles an hour, slowing to 40, and then allowing the engine braking to carry me up to, again, 45 miles an hour, and again on the brakes. It was a relatively cool day. It was in the 70s, 80s, so I didn't have heat as an issue. You see that truck going zipping by. It must be unloaded, I hope. But typically 40, 45 miles an hour was not an issue throughout this entire trip down the hill. There were sections of this road that were choppy. Bridge surfaces were bumpy, but the road had been repaired in sections, and each transition was a bit choppy, banging around here. The road continued to do ups and downs all the way to Virginia, and even into Virginia the road was still pretty steep and rough in sections. In Virginia, though, the road was in better repair. In West Virginia here, even though it was a toll, the state appeared to be struggling to keep the road smooth, even though it was in reasonable repair. The repairs made for a choppy surface. Included this section here. The road actually is still pretty steep. It doesn't look so in the video, but we're up and down, and of course not much straight space. It's always twisting, but the scenery was just spectacular. It really is a pretty section of road. Very nice vistas. Nice. It was actually a very nice afternoon. Very nice ride. Here's a sign for exit 183, and the road ends in West Virginia at mile marker 184. Get it into Virginia. So this has been quite an interesting ride. Not nearly as scary as one might imagine. The vehicle, the RV, handled it very well. No scary moments. Managing the speed was quite easy. All the parts did their job. Brakes were fine, engine braking was fine, no indication of overheating in any way. Made it to Virginia without issue. It was a wonderful afternoon, beautiful weather, and all our equipment operated as it should. Easy ride, nice afternoon. Hope you enjoyed this video. This was a relatively straightforward trip. I was excited, even with the 7% grade. Not an issue, going up or down. We had a good time. Coach handled it perfectly. Enjoy. Happy trails.